Today we're going to be painting another Kings of War Champions miniature, Alanis Sallustis. She is an amazing looking model, and I'm very excited to start painting this. Now, the only thing I did different with this model is I did a zenithal highlight with the black undercoat and the white sprayed in an angle using a spray can. And before I did all that, I took a couple paper clips and I bent them in a funky way, and I took my little hand drill and drilled into either side of the staff and either side of the base, and I made sure they were the right lengths and glued them in with some CA glue, and the result is a bolt of energy coming from the staff, and it looks really, really cool. And that's the only difference between the original model and what I added to it. So the first step is we're going to grab our black primer Stynel Res because we want to darken the base down. That way our dirt will be a darker color underneath. And we're going to cover the entirety of just the ground, not the rocks or the pillars, just the base and the ground. After the black primer is applied, we're going to use flat earth. And flat earth from Vallejo is a good base color for our ground cover. And we're just going to cover everything we just painted in black. Once the ground is covered in our flat earth, we're going to go over it with an Agrax Earth Shade. And this just really kind of just darkens the dirt down, gives it a nice brown tone. This will get on all the recesses and darken them up to show the cracks in the ground and around the marble that we're going to be painting later. After our Agrax Earth Shade has dried completely, we're going to take flat earth and dry brush the entirety of the ground. Just bring back the color on the surfaces. Remember to get the majority of your paint off your brush using a paper towel, just making sure that we're covering the surfaces and the edges from where the cracks are. And after that's done, we're going to grab our khaki from Vallejo Game Color, and we're going to do a high highlight dry brush with the khaki over the top, getting a majority of the paint off of our brush after we dip it in the paint, and going over it very lightly around just the edges and the outside areas where the light hits. Next up, we're going to get our neutral gray and put a base coat down on all the marble pillars and the stones that she's standing on. After we finish with the neutral gray, we're going to switch to a sky gray and kind of do a heavy dry brush where we're not getting all the paint off of our dry brush. We're kind of over brushing to where we're leaving quite a bit of the sky gray to lighten it up quite a bit. This is our first stage of making it look like a marble stone. The next color we're going to use is off-white. And this is going to be an overbrush / stippling. So we're going to stipple this and dry brush it over the stone itself. To give it the marbling look, you want to, instead of just straight out of the paint pot, you want to water down this paint just a little bit and stipple it all over the rocks and do a dry brush of the high points as you go. And once you have that done, you're starting to see the marbling effect that you get using those three colors. We're going to move on to a khaki. And if you notice in some stone, they have a very light beige. I chose khaki. It's a little dark. I could have chose a more lighter color. But if you water this down, about 90% water, about 10% paint, you can get that faint beige color that you're looking for. Now, when you put it on there, it's a little heavy, and it seems a little heavy, but we're going to bring it back down in the next step. In the next step, we're going to go with a pure white, and that's why we went with an off-white before, because this pure white is going to blend everything together. Then we're going to carry on and fix our mistakes with the dry brush on the dirt with some more flat earth in these little spots. You can fix it up with a little Agrax as well if you'd like, or just leave it there for some ground variation. After that, we're going to take our white again, and the spots where the magical electric shock is hitting the ground, we're going to dry brush that white, and later on we're going to be painting that in a green color, and you'll see how that is going to work. It's going to be some objects, OSL, some object source lighting, and it's going to look pretty cool in the end. But with this step, our base is finished. Now that the base is complete, we're going to use beige red to base coat the face. The innermost part of the model is usually the skin or skin tones, and beige red I use for bright skin tones or young skin tones. And once that beige red is dry, we're going to take a sepia wash from Vallejo Game Color, or you can use sepia from Games Workshop. It doesn't really matter at this point. We just want to get a little bit of dark tone in the recesses. We're going to come back to our beige red, and we're going to paint just the highest points, leaving the recesses alone, like the eye sockets and the mouth and the under part of the chin and neck. Next up is the sunny skin tone, and we're just going to put that over the top of the beige red we brought back, but we're going to go a little bit higher and leaving some of the beige red alone. And this is a really easy, simple process. And after our sunny skin tone is dry, we're going to use a basic skin tone, which is much lighter for the high recesses, like the above the eyes, the nose, the chin if it's protruding, and a little bit of the neck area where the cloak hits the neck. The next color we're going to use is Tenebrous Gray, and this is a very dark gray, and we're going to base coat the entirety of the hair. And after we get the entire base coat down of the gray, we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to highlight it with a leather brown. Water your leather brown down 50-50 with water. Just go over the high points and ignore the recesses, and you should get a dark brown hair. After the hair is finished, we're going to move on to the armor, and we're going to base coat it in a Vallejo Game Color gunmetal. This is a very dark armor, and so I'm using the darkest gunmetal and armor color I have. And we're going to base coat the entire armor from top to bottom in this color. And we're going to go over it later with some gold colors and things like that. And don't forget the wings on the back of the armor. This is also in metal in the photograph. Now, you could paint them white if you'd like, which I thought about, but they looked pretty metal to me, so I stuck with the chainmail base coat as well. So once we have all of the armor base coated and the wings, we're going to go in with a highlight of chainmail silver. It's a brighter silver, but not too bright and overwhelming, and it'll blend well together. We're going to pick out a few spots that the armor has the light hitting it, and just highlighting that color. And don't forget to highlight the wings in this color. After we finish with the chainmail silver, we're going to move on to a glorious gold, and we're going to pick out the decorations that are on the armor, specifically the chest plate, the two seals on the top and left that hold the cloak on, and the knee and the kneecap and the legs have these lines that you can put some gold on. Honestly, it's just your preference of exactly what you want to do when you put the glorious gold on as a base coat. This is just a base coat. And then we're going to go in and we're going to highlight it with a brighter gold than the glorious gold afterwards. You want to use the smallest detail brush that you have when you pick these out, and be very careful not to hit the silver if you can. If not, if you do hit the silver, it's okay. You can go in and fix it up with your base coat silver that you used. After you've base coated all the places you want the gold, you want to come in and highlight that gold where the light is hitting it with polished gold. It's a Vallejo Game Color, and it's a perfect highlight for the glorious gold. And you can accent and pick out these colors on the high points on the chest plate, on the wings, and it looks really good. And with that highlight on the gold, we are finished with the armor. Don't forget the wings and the arms if you did that. Next thing, we're going to take our leather brown, and we're going to paint the handle of her staff, the leather gloves that she's wearing, and the leather undercoat or tunic that's underneath on her arms and sleeves. This will be our base coat for all the leather and the straps. And now we're going to put an Agrax Earthshade over all the leather brown to darken up the recesses, and then we'll come back later with a leather brown and highlight that back up. And while the Agrax Earthshade is drying, we can move on to Green Stuff Worlds Skeleton Brown Dip. You dry your brush off, and then you scrape away some of it across the pages, and it makes it look really faded and really cool looking. And I think it worked well here. Just as a little added touch to our spellbook, we're going to go ahead and grab our Tiberius Gray that we used earlier, and we're going to scribble some lines across the book with this color. The dip dries very fast, so don't worry about timing. Even if you smear a little bit, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just putting some little stipples and dots in a line to make it look like there's writing on the spellbook itself. And now we're going to go back to our leather brown to highlight up all the leather gloves and the handle of the staff. And just stick to the high recesses and the parts that hit the light the most. I'd leave the underneath without a highlight at all, but you can hit it in a couple spots. But really what we're trying to do is get some separation from the deep recesses to the top parts and make the strap stand out just a little bit. And with that 50-50 water to leather brown mix, we're going to add 4 drops of khaki to highlight our leather straps and our undercloak on the miniature itself. Mix it well together, wipe off any excess water off your brush before you put the brush to the model, and we're just going to get the parts and highlight the parts that hit the light on the top and some on the sides. Just imagine the light coming from above, and you can decipher where to put this highlight at. And now that all our leather is highlighted up, we're going to move on to our dark Russian blue for all of our blue cloaks. I originally was going to do a red or a yellow, but the blue looks so good next to the green and the flames on a lot of the uniforms for the Bastillions. So I decided to go with a blue. So dark Prussian blue is our base coat. So probably 75% paint to 25% water for our base coat. And just want to get a good, clean base coat of this dark Prussian blue on the miniature. Now I used 2 different brushes here, a size 3, and then I used a size 0 to get in around the front near the armor and the face. Just make sure I did not get anything on the face or the armor. So just be careful, use a couple different brushes, and don't forget to paint the underneath of the cloak and give that a good base coat. You should be done for the most part with the underneath once you put a good clear base coat on, because you won't really need to highlight that underneath there because of the fact that the light is not really hitting it. Now the small cloak underneath near the torso or the belt area that's coming down, you will need to highlight that. And don't forget to paint the back of the spellbook. The back of the spellbook in the photograph is blue as well, and I really like that, so I went ahead and base coated that in blue as well, and we'll be highlighting that up as well. Once we got a good base coat, we're going to take that same color of dark Prussian blue, and we're going to add 5 drops of our deep blue to this mixture. And we're just going to go over everything except for the deepest recesses. We're going to leave those alone. And don't forget about the book, the spell book, to paint that as well, using a couple different brushes to accomplish all of this. And remember, just stick with the high surface areas and leave the crevices alone, and you'll come out with a nice smooth paint. I also added a little bit more water, so we're dealing with probably about 50% water to 50% paint as well. And then we're going to add more deep blue to this, 5 more drops, just to bring the color up more. And we're going to go over the same areas we went over, just receding from the recesses a little bit each time that we do this. That way we're getting smooth blends, and we're going to do a small glaze at the end of this when we are finished, and it should blend all those colors together nicely, and the cloak will be highlighted. And our final highlight that we're going to use is the deep sky blue, and we're going to stick to the places that light shows the most. Obviously the whole back of the cloak and parts of the cloak in the front, and of course the spell book on the front of the model. Now keep to the highest recesses with this, use it a little bit sparingly, and please dilute it. And dilute it with 50-50 water, and wipe off any excess water off of your brush, and you'll have a nice smooth highlight on the model and the cape and the cloak and everything else. And once you have that deep sky blue put on there, we're going to glaze now. We're going to make our original color, the dark Prussian blue, with the deep blue mixed in with it. We're going to water it down even more to probably 90% water, 10% paint. If you have to, on your paint palette, put it in a different well, 4 or 5 drops, and just add a ton of water to it. bring your paper towel up, dip it into the paint, and wipe the majority of the wetness off the brush itself. I use a big brush for this and a small brush for the front part of the model, but make sure you get as much of the moisture off the brush as you possibly can, and test it on your finger if you have to, and you should get a very faint blue color to wash over the entirety or glaze over the entirety of the cape and the cloak, blending all those colors together for our final blue look. And once that's finished, we're going to grab our hammered copper, and our hammered copper is going to be our base coat for our staff, for the gold decorations on the spell book. And this is just going to be a base coat, probably the only coat I'm going to put on because it's a great looking bright color that goes with everything, including the tip of the staff where we're going to have the green on there. We're going to have the green lightning or the magic coming from the staff and hitting the ground. It's just a good all around copper color that really doesn't need a lot of highlighting. If you choose to highlight this, I would go with some kind of brighter copper than the hammered copper. I'm sure pure copper would work well. And then we're going to dry brush the white onto the staff once the hammered copper is completely dry. We're going to dry brush a white very faintly, get the majority of your paint off the brush, and go around the cylinder that is at the end of that staff. And what this is going to do is when we put the green on, this will brighten it up as if it's actually coming from the staff, and it'll be real bright. You'll see in a minute. We're going to take our AK Inks Lime Green and our Magic Sauce, the Deep Shades Medium, and we're going to mix these two together. And we're going to do this at a lighter pigment than we normally do. We're going to do 3 drops of the Deep Shade Medium, and we're going to do 2 drops of our Lime Green ink. Now this stuff, the ink is very, very pigment heavy, so you could actually put more drops in if you think it's too light, but I would start off with something like a 3-to-2 ratio and work yourself up with more pigment if you have to. But this one, we're using a very light one because we want it to look electric, we want it to look magic, we want it to look and pop on the miniature itself. And we're going to lightly spread this mixture over the staff where we dry brushed, on the ground where we dry brushed, and it's a little object source lighting on the rocks behind it that are the marble behind it, as if it is glowing against that. It's a really cool effect, and it works very, very well. I really love the AK inks. If I haven't said it before, I absolutely think they are one of the best things that were invented next to contrast paints for miniatures itself. It really, really makes it a lot easier to make things glow or have a highlight as if they're glowing and do cool effects like this. That's it. That's the completed miniature. The only thing left to do is to put an acrylic varnish over the whole entirety of the thing and paint around the base black or brown or gray at the bottom. It doesn't really matter, but that's all I've got. Ta-ta!